she really enjoyed it. And then we also, what else did we do? I guess so. Yeah, I bought, like I said, Elden Ring, right? And we talked a little bit about it last time. We got into it a little bit, where it's a Souls game. It's from Software. That company makes Dark Souls and even Demon Souls from before, which recently got a remake on the PlayStation 5. Um, with and those type of games, and they're typically difficult and stuff. But this is the most recent installment of that franchise. They were able to get some work from George R. R. Martin, who had written Game of Thrones and other things, to help them with the setting and world building.
Nice, nice.
Yeah, so it's really a super interesting game. Very very
Is
vague
it
too.
third person? Is it third person or first person?
It's third person,
Okay.
and I think I asked you before, but you hadn't played Skyrim or Fallout or anything like that, right?
Fallout. I actually own a Fallout game for my PS4, and it's funny because I remember. I don't. I think I may have had like a little extra money, and this is like maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago. I'm not sure, maybe four. I picked up a few PS4 games, and that was one of the games I wanted to get because I think I had somebody, a relative, playing it. But I played just like maybe 20 minutes of this game, and I realized that okay, this is one of those games where I'm only gonna have to play this. Like I can really pick up a little bit, like every single thing I can pick up, I can
Yep.
analyze. Like, I said, okay, this is not gonna be like a Red Dead Redemption type of, like I can just finish in like a 2, 3 weeks or something. Like this is something that's gonna, if I really want to be thorough, it's gonna take some time. So I have not returned back to the game. So maybe after I finish Red Dead Redemption 2, I'll
Yeah, it can be a little daunting, but Red Dead's actually a good example too. Or I was about to say Game of Thrones, Grand Theft Auto. Uh,
yeah,
they're all kind of games with like stories and free roam, and that's kind of the main thing I'm picking at. Not really being able to pick
okay,
up every item and everything. Um,
okay,
this game, in fact, is just so the fact that it's a giant map and you can go around and then you can see something. Oh, look at those mountains! I'm gonna go over there, and you can do it. You can go over there, and
wow,
there's things for you to interact with and do. So
oh,
the classic difficulty is there. You will die a lot. If you saw any of the stream or anything, you saw I died a lot.
my goodness,
And there's a lot of customization. I ended up going. There's a couple different preset roles. There's like, well, at least in the before games, they had cleric, they had bandit, they had sorcerer, warrior, thief, right? Things like that. And they have different names in this one, but same kind of
okay,
basic concepts. And so what I wanted to do, I spent a lot of time in the character creator. I wanted to make a faith build because I hadn't tried that yet. So it has they use it. They say it's faith, and what it does is it's like a medic or like a healer, right? So you have healing abilities, and you can cast miracles, which some of them may be offensive spells, things like that.
oh, interesting, interesting.
Yeah, so in the first Dark Souls, I went sword and shield, which is basic. You have sword and shield, and you're just kind of blocking and attacking when you can. And in the second one, I went with the more nimble. I would roll a lot to avoid attacks, and I had two swords in my hands, right? And then in the third Dark Souls, I wanted to go magic build, but I hadn't played that yet. I still plan to do that at some point. And so I was just thinking, what else? What other role can I try this time, right? So, oh, perfect, faith. And I typically don't pick a healer role in these games that provide you with that, but it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
really interesting actually. When I was making it, I was having a lot of fun because I was just making him look like an old, decrepit dude, and making his chin all protruding, his nose huge, and like him just look
Oh,
ugly, and like. What I said with my buddies when I was making it was he looks like a guy who goes to yard sales and buys old yearbooks. Just shows up, like doesn't even know the people, just buys random yearbooks. You don't know what he's gonna do with them.
I don't think that yearbook thing.
So he just looks like a creep kinda, and he's just old.
Um,
And so he's like on pilgrimage, and the whole point of it was like I was just gonna be quoting scripture while I was playing the game with like demons and stuff, and it ended up being really fun. Julie was having a blast too. She was with me as
oh, cool.
we were recording it, and we were just going off like calling like the enemies sinners as we were like, like smiting them and stuff, and And so that was a really really fun time. There was even what's difficult is like with this whole trying to read the Bible all the time, trying to improve my life. I'm trying to like cut out curse words a little bit just for my daughter's sake and in general
Yeah,
around
yeah,
the
of course.
house. But it is very difficult when you just keep getting the "you died" screen like over and
Mm,
over, and you're spending time,
yeah. Yeah.
on you've had some boss fights before, like just
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah. It's funny because there are certain words like, for example, like the N word. I think I've shared with you that very early on in my Christian walk, I retired it, but there were other words that like little things like what you're talking about. I'm playing Resident Evil or I'm playing something and I'm dying, and it's like the first few times I'm thinking, okay, well, let me figure out what I need to do. But especially when it's like maybe it's getting late or maybe you've been here for a while and it's like, okay, I'm determined to get past this, but
yeah,
it's not working. So yeah, your level of agitation starts to kind of
it does
rise.
that, it does.
I'm actually getting, I'm wondering like, can I throw my controller into the TV and will the TV? Because I feel like I want to just,
Yeah.
and yeah, but it's so interesting because I was briefly thinking about this before, but I was watching a old Superman Channel 5 cartoon years ago,
Yeah.
and Lobo was one of the characters that Superman was fighting. You familiar with Lobo?
I know Lobo, yeah.
Yeah,
Like
okay, but
intergalactic bounty hunter, right?
yeah, there you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But he uses all these different curse words, but in his language. So
Language.
yeah, yeah. So one of his words was like frag, you know, like frag or freaking frag.
Yeah.
So I actually found myself saying that, sometimes either in my head or out loud. I was like frag, and sometimes I'm thinking to myself, you know, I know what internally what really mean. So sometimes I even wonder like, is that okay to say? But it's interesting. It's interesting because
Well, no, I mean, there's a bunch of jokes that like, they're gonna release
uh,
the Xbox Live party chat dialogues from like when we were middle
oh,
schoolers, just bad mouthing, and we're all screwed, right? We're all
oh
canceled.
yeah, you got it. You got it. Yeah,
But
it's interesting. It's interesting because there's a lot of videos on like YouTube where people record some of the things that other people say to them,
really,
and yeah, 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 and sometimes very inappropriate things, and people just, and guys especially, it's like we'll just say whatever, because and yeah, so it's very, very fascinating, what comes out of us during those moments.
yeah. What was funny was because during those boss fights where I just kept dying, couldn't get the hold of it. I'm like, maybe you know what? Maybe I don't have enough faith. Maybe it's because I'm using this material weapons instead of just the raw faith power in my hand that I'm losing so much. Let me try this time. I'll put away my weapon. I'll just have the faith of God in my left hand and a chip on my
Oh my,
shoulder in my right, and we'll go
oh
at it.
my goodness! Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness!
For sure blaspheming, no question. Like not proud of it.
Oh my goodness!
um,
Uh,
I
so
even
so is this one of those games where like over time there's usually like some type of enhancements or
yeah. So
like it could be like the next 5-10 years and they'll be adding stuff. Is that one of those games?
no, no, no. So it's not an MMO. It's not something a long service game where they keep adding things. It's a community and everything. What happens is it's more of a game where they're gonna have the base game. They might have some DLC later, but that's usually huge content too.
Yeah.
And then they stop it and they'll keep supporting it as far as online for patches and fixes. But really, then the modding community, all the people that play the game, there's a huge modding community for the Dark Souls games that come in and add their own
Okay.
things, and a lot of times large story patches as well. So
Oh,
it's not one of those type of games, a live
oh,
service
okay.
game, but
Okay.
uh,
Okay.
it does have improvement where you can kill an enemy and it'll drop a smithing stone, which you can use to improve your weapon, right? And I might have
Mm.
talked about this last time, but that's the thing. They're difficult, but and in the sense that you can't just run your way through them. A lot of times, sometimes you can run past enemies and that's fine, but you have to know the balance. Like if you disrespect or you think nothing of an enemy, they'll just chop you up real quick. Even the lowest of
Yeah.
enemies if you're not careful with it. So
Oh,
you always have to
yeah.
kind of have that in your mind. And This one isn't as it's more, I guess, new player friendly
Oh,
because
okay.
typically when you get to a boss, right, you will die and then you will respawn back to the closest save point that you have discovered, and then you have to do a boss run, which is where you go down the path to the boss's door, and it is littered with the enemies you had killed before, right? Because when you die and you respawn at this place, or if you go back to this save point, you can do that willingly without dying and sit down at a bonfire, is what they're called. What they will do is recharge your healing items, right? Get your health back up and your stamina back up, but it also revives all the enemies you had killed.
So you really have to like think about that.
Yeah. So the bosses will not respawn after you've killed them, but if you haven't killed them, they go back to full health and everything. It resets. So what you can do is typically, so that's why the boss run is kind of hard, because you're trying to make your way to the boss to fight the boss, and you're taking all these hits, and you're like, oh, I had to use some health items to even get here, and then you're not fighting at peak efficiency that you could have been, right? So that's kind of where some of the difficulty comes from. And in this game, they've kind of, so I'm not very far, but they've removed a lot of that. Essentially, you can run past almost all the run itself is short to the boss, and you can kind of run past enemies if there are any to get there. There's even little statues. What I found, there's this big dragon boss that I was fighting, which, by the way, visual's great. The game looks gorgeous. It looks amazing.
Yeah, I've been looking at screenshots and stuff online. Man, it
Yeah,
looks really
it's large land. You can ride your horse around and all sorts of things, and
nice.
it looks beautiful and it's very interactive. And so, a giant dragon came out of nowhere, and so I'm fighting this dragon boss. And what'll happen is when I die, I can go closer. There's a spot that's like close by where you can start there, or you can go back to the save point, right? And I choose to start
Interesting.
there. If I was at the save point, I could still run to the boss. But if I start there, it's just closer, saves everyone time, makes it easier, right?
Mm,
So
mm,
this one is as far like the easiest to newcomers, which is good. It's
okay,
a pretty popular game in general, but
nice.
yeah, I found myself just constantly having to go back and face these bosses like over a long period of time, and I just would get frustrated, but then I try to be like funny about it with the whole faith thing, putting away my weapons. And eventually I was using a spear and a shield at first because that's what my character started with, but I found,
Okay.
so you find other weapons in the game, and I found a whip, and I had never used that weapon in the other games before. But and what's cool about the game is each weapon has a different move set, right? So
Nice.
Claymore will have like a stabbing move set, and it'll have a swinging move set, right? So that's really
Okay.
helpful if you're in a tight corridor. You need that stabbing one because if you swing, you're just going to hit the walls and you're not going to do
Oh,
anything,
interesting. Makes sense. Makes
right?
sense.
So I picked up the whip, and it was so fluid. Like whoosh, and like hitting the enemy, and then you can do like a circle to get enemies around you. It was
Uh-huh.
is very entertaining, and then I just was filled with such righteous power to like send all these demons to hell. Like it's as if I was playing Doom or something. I held like a glowing light of faith in my left hand for healing, and then the whip in my right. I was like, repent, repent. Oh man, it was
Like,
so fun with Julie. She was quipping off too. It was great. Um,
oh, that's so cool.
and then on horseback too, just running past people that are walking, and just having a blast. So for sure, keeping the whip for a long time. That was a really fun weapon to use, and it would like stagger some of the bosses. So what happens is the bosses will attack, right? Or any enemy you attack, even you can attack somebody. But if you're staggered, someone hits you before you get land the attack. If it's a strong enough hit, you stop your attack mid animation, right?
Oh, snap.
So it's super helpful if you're quick enough, right, to
Mhm.
just stop them in their tracks. There is a stat called poise, which if you have a high poise, you can tank those hits, right? Doesn't matter how many times you hit me. If I have high poise, you're gonna get hit. The hammer's gonna come down,
Oh,
right?
oh, okay, nice, nice.
And that's typically synonymous with a heavy set build, a tankier build with heavy armor and everything, where you're not focused on rolling out of the way. More so, you just take the hits, right?
Wow,
So
wow,
there's a
wow.
bunch of ways to play it, and it's super fun. Everyone should try it. It's a great game.
Yeah, yeah, Interesting, very interesting, especially with the open world aspect.
Yeah.
Because I
Yeah.
feel like I'm appreciating that more,
Uh-huh.
with games.
And I've said
Yeah,
this
yeah,
to you before. I love they're my favorite games because I always picture, okay, if I had nothing else to play in the world, I this could be it. I would be fine, right? This is one of those games. But with
uh,
me, I'm so like, oh, look at this pretty thing over here. Look at this shiny thing over here. I never
yeah,
focus on the main story and I rarely
yeah,
beat
yeah,
these
yeah, yeah.
games, you
That's
know?
how I feel with like Grand Theft Auto, Rockstar,
Yeah.
Red Dead Redemption. It takes me forever to finish them because I want to, I'll say, oh, hey, there's a mountain over there and there's smoke over there. Like, I wonder who lives over there. And you can actually go and travel over there and see, who's there, And a
Yeah.
lot of people like to rob random families in their homes. And, it's crazy. It's really crazy. Like, the games just give you so much freedom,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
It's awesome.
It's wild. Yeah, yeah, right?